Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalrin and today I'm bringing you guys a Outlaw Rogue 735 PvP guide. Now, I wasn't gonna make one because I felt like there wasn't enough changes for Outlaw since patch 7.3 and 735, but because you guys on the live stream side of the channel have asked us so many times for this guide, I decided to bring it for you. I know the BFA is literally right around the corner, but I felt that you guys can still use this guide in order to enjoy Outlaw. So you can use this guide in order to dive into Outlaw, enjoy it for whatever we have left of Legion, so then once BFA drops, you can be a seasoned player and step into BFA ready and prepared. So that's the point of this guide, is to get you guys prepared mostly for BFA, to get you playing the current Outlaw spec, and of course I'll make videos updating for BFA as soon as it comes out. So I hope you guys enjoy. This guide is going to have enough basic and some advanced parts in order to help you guys get started, and hopefully it's comprehensive enough. I think I put everything I wanted in order to teach somebody else how to play Outlaw, which is a great and unique spec. The spec of Outlaw is the pirate spec of Rogue with a little bit of extra RNG to it, and I know a lot of you don't like RNG, but I feel like it has just enough. I love a CC heavy playstyle for PvP, I love using grappling hook anywhere I go, and overall I think this is a great spec with a lot of versatility to your damage, to your crowd control, and a pretty deep mechanic of cooldown reduction, which not a lot of rogues get to utilize. Overall I think it's a great spec, and it's a spec that I'm going to dedicate my time to playing in BFA. And of course with that, I'll also be releasing BFA Outlaw Rogue PvP guides as well as PvE guides. I'm planning on making a Mythic Plus guide and a Raid guide. So let's get into Outlaw for 735 PvP. And of course, let's start out with the first thing, the talents. When it comes to talents, Outlaw has it pretty easy because we have really one functional build, which is good if you don't like having different builds to juggle between, but it also stifles creativity and variety. In the first row, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. I prefer Swordmaster because more saber slash procs, especially during my burst, allows me for a lot more great output through damage, but it doesn't really make a difference which one you pick. In the second row, Grappling Hook is the bread and butter of Outlaw and is amazing for mobility. In the third row, Deeper Strat synergizes really well with the artifact weapon, whether it comes for damage or crowd control. In the fourth row, Elusiveness is honestly the best one for defense. In the fifth row, Dirty Tricks is the only useful talent. In the sixth row, Alacrity is way too strong and greatly outweighs Killing Spree, which I hope will be different in BFA. In the seventh row, Mark for Death is simply the best option. So now this question is going to come up. Why not Slice and Dice? Well, Slice and Dice is not a bad buff on its own, it just doesn't have the things that Roll the Bones brings. Without Roll the Bones, you're losing out on cooldown reduction effect, you're losing out on damage with critical strikes, you're losing out on damage with broadsides buff, and you're losing out on potential damage with Jolly Roger buff. So it's a lot of positive components that you really don't want to give up for PvP. If you're somebody new and you simply want to start out with a fun spec, Slice and Dice is fine, but eventually you want to transition into Roll the Bones, as learning how to play around with the buff mechanic is going to make you a better Outlaw player in the long run. Our honor talents are also very easy. First one is the Trinket. If you are not an orc or a human, you simply just want to go with the Gladiator's Medallion. In the second row, I prefer the extra health that I can get, but Sparring isn't terrible against melee heavy comps. Every other talent I never change out no matter the situation, because the other ones are simply just not as good or inferior. I've honestly made way too many videos complaining about for Blizzard to change some of our honor talents, especially a lot of them that are just dead in the water, but they haven't, so this is the best we got. Although the ones we do have, like Plunder Armor, Control as King, and Thick as Thieves, are very strong, and if you can find a way to use them properly, then it can make you a far better Outlaw Rogue player in PvP. Now, there are a lot of macros, and I can give you every macro for Rogue in the world, but I think I'll give you guys some baseline macros to get you started. Some of them are Outlaw specific, but a lot of them are general Rogue macros. The first one is a Sap macro, which will allow you to look for stealthies, and it's mostly designed to look for stealthies. The next macro is a Focus Gouge macro. It'll gouge the focus target that you have. You will, if you're playing 2v2s or 3v3s, you will have to switch around who your gouge target is, and I usually have no problem with that, but I feel like that's the least you can do for yourself if you want to PvP. You will want to have at least a Focus Gouge target macro. Gouge is a great tool for Outlaw, and being able to gouge a target without having to change target every single time is going to be very helpful. I guess you can say everything I said for Gouge, but also double it up for Blind. And while you're at it, you can double it up for your stun, since you can use a stun a lot more often than your average rogue. I also do have a burst macro, but for anybody that's new at Outlaw, this isn't going to be your Swifty one-shot macro. Outlaw is more about a setup. You need buffs, you need to have a setup, you need to have a stun and common points and energy ready before you pop this ability and pop all of your cooldowns at the same time. So if you're somebody who's new at Outlaw Rogue, I wouldn't use this macro at the very beginning, but as you get better and if you just want to have a one-shot capability in the opener, this is just something fun I use from time to time. And then the holy god, the best macro I've ever made, grappling hook cursor macro. Now, what this macro does is very, very simple. It changes up the way you use grappling hook. Usually grappling hook, you hit the keybind with grappling hook, you get a green reticle over your cursor, you move the cursor where you want to go, left click, and then you shoot grappling hook forward. This bypasses the whole area of effect where you gotta left click. It basically will go where your cursor is pointing, which in PvP, when it comes to clutch situations, this definitely saves a lot of time and adds up to your reaction time. Now let's talk about the playstyle of Outlaw. It's a simple spec, and it's not really all that difficult to get into, but a lot of it is all about setups. It has a setup heavy specialization. You won't be going out there like an Assassination Rogue, blowing cooldowns and just nuking people down, not without a plan. Basic playstyle of a specialization is, you build common points with Saber Slash, use Pistol Shot mostly as a free proc with opportunity in order to generate common points. Once you have between 5 or 6 common points, you use Run Through and Between the Eyes, one to deal damage, the other is to stun and deal damage. And you mostly a specialization about building up common points and using that Roll the Bones. Now, once you roll the bones, you get a various plethora of buffs, which basically dictates how you play your spec, and you're supposed to adjust your rotation slightly depending on what buffs you have. A lot of those buffs are very, very powerful. A lot of them have a lot of interesting effects like cooldown reduction, extra common point building, extra Saber Slash procs, extra crit. There's a lot of buffs to get through. So when it comes to playing Outlaw Rogue, learn your buffs. Besides buffs and how to build common points, you are a spec that's all about crowd control. Gouge is an ability you should be using a lot because it will interrupt an enemy or incapacitate them, as long as you don't DR for saps. If let's say you're playing with a mage, you definitely don't want to DR those polymorphs. But this ability can be used in order to train down casters, and you can rotate between gouge and kicks and stuns in order to stop them from casting any spell you want. Stuns is something that's huge for Outlaw. You're a lot like a Subtlety when it comes to Subtlety, Shadow Dance, Cheap Shot spam, but as an Outlaw Rogue instead, you throw out full 5 common point kidneys at enemies at 20-yard range. Another advantage of Outlaw is range stuns. Between the Eyes is part of the bread and butter of your spec. It deals decent amount of damage and stuns your enemy at range. And this is something you can use over and over and over because of the massive cooldown reduction aspect of the spec. Passively you have natural cooldown reduction, but if you get a buff of True Bearing, you can increase that cooldown reduction. You reduce the cooldowns of your abilities by spending common points into finishers, whether you're using them into run-throughs for damage, Between the Eyes for stunts, or into other Roll the Bones for rerolls. Generally, this is how you play a spec. You build common points, and you fish for buffs. Once you have the right buffs, then you line up a cross CC with your teammates, and then you try to burst people down. Or if you're by yourself in a 1v1 duel or in a battleground, you find a target, make sure you have common points and energy ready ahead of time, stun them, pop your cooldowns, and go ham. But Outlaw Rogue on its own as a spec is pretty lackluster, but it benefits heavily in team fights because of Tricks of Trade. Tricks of Trade has an honor talent called Thick as Thieves that makes Tricks of Trade grant a friendly party and yourself 15% increased damage for 6 seconds. When you're playing in arenas with another powerful, strong, hard-hitting DPS class, like a Fury Warrior, if you buff their damage by an extra 15% damage and throw out your rogue stuns and crowd control like Blind and Gouge, you can really unleash a lot of damage. Pair Outlaw Rogue up with any strong, powerful class that's in the meta, whether it's Enhancement Shaman, Elemental Shaman, Fury Warrior, Frost, DK, anything, and the spec can honestly make someone else shine. In a way, the specialization is very much a support class, and there's no such thing as support in World of Warcraft. Usually you are a DPS, healer, or a tank, but an Outlaw Rogue in PvP has a lot of crowd control and mostly setup damage, as you deal basically 0 damage outside of your big cooldown setups. But once you have your cooldowns, this is where you can really go ham. And it takes a long time to really get Outlaw, a long time to practice, a long time to learn the buff mechanic, and a lot of patience. This spec is a lot different than Assassination Subtlety because Assassin Subtlety can just go at a drop of a hat, and Outlaw needs a lot more setup. But once you get that setup, the outcome, once you get the burst you need, once you get the buffs you need in an arena, the outcome in itself is the most satisfying feeling I've ever felt playing World of Warcraft. Now, I guess I could talk about openers, even though Outlaw Rogue isn't a heavy opener type of class, but we can still show you a few openers. The first opener is my all-in opener. You basically would use this in BGs or in arenas where you know the enemy doesn't have a trinket, like for example they're running adaptation, or if they're running relentless and they're not an orc. You basically can use this to lock them down and burst them down in the opener, popping all of your cooldowns. The next opener is simply an artifact weapon introduction. It's kind of like a way for an Outlaw to just say hello. You would use Mark for Death into a stun, pop your artifact weapon and adrenaline rush only. Then you would hopefully roll into decent buffs, and if you can roll into true bearing into that opener, then it'll probably be the best situation possible, because then you could chain stuns back to back to back and might even force trinkets out of enemies. The last opener is the opener I use in most battleground situations and in my 5v5-1v1 duels, where I'm just trying to gauge what buffs I'll get. You'll first use Mark for Death, roll the bones in order to roll your buffs to see what you get, and then you just have a normal opener with a cheap shot, build up a few comp points between the eyes, and then see what your enemy does afterwards. It is a very baseline opener, so if you're not sure if you want to burst, this is something you can do in the opener. And that's everything I needed to cover Outlaw Rogue. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to be making a few more guides, like a Mythic Plus for Outlaw, a comprehensive one, as well as an Outlaw Rogue rating guide. So you guys can enjoy Outlaw for whatever we have left with in Legion. And come BFA, you know I'll be out here making guides for Outlaw as well as other Rogue specs, because I feel like with the new expansion, I'll be able to tone the channel back down towards Rogue content. But overall, I've been enjoying making so many videos on just about everything, and I feel like it opened up my channel. I feel like covering BFA allowed my channel to grow a little bit more in different ways, and I'm super happy to be bringing you guys a lot more guides for rogues from here on out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this guide, as always, I would appreciate you guys giving this video a like, because likes allow my videos to reach a wider audience so more people can see the videos and overall grow my channel, so that'd be very much appreciated. If you guys enjoy this kind of guides and want to see more guides on Outlaw Rogue, PvE or PvP, be sure to subscribe to the channel, as I'll be releasing them very soon. Or if you simply want to subscribe for the 5v5-1v1 duels we do here on the channel, or the discussion videos or BFA updates, which I'll always be there for. And if you guys want to catch some of the live streams and even participate, if you want to hit the notification bell down below, it'll allow you to get notified every time a video of mine goes up or every time a live stream goes live, so you guys can catch that as soon as it's up. Thank you guys so much for watching again. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see all of you guys in another video.